Welcome to the MARANATHA Global Bible Study. I'm Daniel Thomas Lancaster with First Fruits of Zion, sitting with you here as a guest at the EMMAUS table for part 3 of a study that we're titling Satan in Chains. If you enjoy learning the Bible and the book of Revelation from the perspective of Jewish eschatology and apocalypticism, I want to encourage you to join Torah Club before this October when First Fruits of Zion launches a year-long Bible study titled End of Days. Just like the name says, it's going to be a year of study about the end of days. So check it out at endofdays.org. All one word, endofdays.org. It often happened that as our Master proclaimed his gospel message, the kingdom of heaven is at hand, the kingdom of heaven is near, he encountered evil spirits afflicting men and women of his generation. Likewise, when he sent out his disciples, he sent them out in pairs proclaiming, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. He told his disciples to validate this claim by performing signs of the kingdom, including the authority to cast out demons. Sometimes the evil spirits fled shrieking before Jesus. Other times they would name him, saying, we know who you are the Holy One of God, and so forth. But he did not allow them to speak. He always silenced them immediately. The religious men of his generation were amazed at the authority that Jesus seemed to wield over the spiritual world. Unlike their own exorcists, he cast demons out seemingly effortlessly, without any ceremonies, rituals, without long sessions of adjurations or exorcism formulas. And Jesus explained, if I cast out demons by the finger of God, then the kingdom of heaven has come upon you. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. So how did his remarkable authority over evil spirits indicate that the kingdom of heaven had come upon them? The answer is found in Revelation 20, the text we've been studying, where we find this significant event which initiates the kingdom, the one event that even makes the Messianic era possible, and that is the chaining and imprisonment of Satan. So we read in the text there, then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, holding in his hand the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain. And he seized the dragon, that ancient serpent who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years, and threw him into the pit, and shut it, and sealed it over him, so that he might not deceive the nations any longer, until the 1,000 years were ended. Revelation 20:1-3. The Messiah wields authority over evil spirits because he is the anointed one, the Messiah, the one who brings the final redemption when Satan will be bound in chains and sealed in the abyss. His authority over these evil spirits indicates that the time of the redemption, the time of the kingdom and Satan's binding is near. It's at hand. The disciples returned to Jesus, amazed, rejoicing. They said, Master, even the evil spirits obey us in your name. And he said to them, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. In other words, he foresaw the ultimate fall of Satan when the devil will be cast down and bound in chains. So close was the kingdom that he could already glimpse this future. Nevertheless, at the time, Satan was still very much in power, and his legions still controlled the world, physically manifest in the power of the dreadful Roman Empire, the power of the fourth beast. As it says in Daniel 7, verse 7, behold, a fourth beast, terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth. It devoured and broke in pieces and stamped what was left with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it. The whole Mediterranean world suffered under the trampling feet of the dreadful iron beast in those days. The Roman Empire extended into Europe, to Spain, to Britain, to Cyrene, to Egypt, all the way to the border with Parthia, fighting over Armenia. And they held the Jewish people and the land of Israel firmly in their grasp, so that instead of a son of David ruling in Jerusalem, Pontius Pilate administered Judea as a Roman province, and Herod Antipas, a mere puppet of Rome, administered Galilee on behalf of Caesar. And the idolatrous Gentile cities of Decapolis, which punctured the Holy Land of Israel, brought the power and influence of Greek culture and Greek gods and Roman flags and standards within the borders of Israel. Satan had it under his authority, in his authority, to offer the kingdom to Jesus. The gospel tells us in Luke 4, the devil took him and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time, and said to him, "To you I will give all this authority and their glory, for it has been delivered to me, and I give it to whom I will." In his Hebrew commentary on the New Testament, Messianic Jewish luminary Rabbi Yechiel Tzvi Lichtenstein, the Evan Zohar, explains, each nation is ruled by an angelic prince, as explained in Daniel. And the Satan was the prince of Rome, as it says in Revelation 13:2, and the dragon, which is Satan, gave the beast his power, his throne, and great authority. At that time, Rome ruled over all the kingdoms, installing and deposing kings. In other words, Satan offered Jesus the reins to the Roman Empire and all the kingdoms of the world. The Roman Empire, under the power of Caesar, represented the kingdom of Satan as the physical manifestation of his power in the world. Likewise, the Davidic kingdom of Israel, under the power of the Messiah, son of David, represents the kingdom of heaven as the physical manifestation of God's power in this world. Therefore, this gospel message that the kingdom of God is at hand was on a collision course with the kingdom of darkness and ultimately the power of Rome, which was the manifestation of it. And we have just such a story in Mark 5. It starts as Jesus is attempting to get away from the crowds that are crushing and pressing around him at Capernaum, and he and his disciples get into a boat to cross the lake. But a fierce storm, a supernatural storm, rises up against them and tries to capsize the boat. Jesus rises from where he's sleeping in the bottom of the boat and rebukes the wind and the waves as if he's rebuking an evil spirit. And then it says they came to the other side, which is a terminology that's significant in Judaism. They came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes. And when Jesus stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. He lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him any more, not even with a chain. For he had often been bound with shackles and chains. But he wrenched the chains apart, and he broke the shackles in pieces. No one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day he was among the tombs, and on the mountains he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones. This story about the man who cannot be chained is the creepiest story in the Bible. Luke's gospel says, he had not put on any clothing for a long time, meaning his naked body always had these open wounds because he was continually gashing at his own flesh with stones. And he spent his waking hours shrieking and screaming, Matthew says, so extremely violent that no one could pass by that way. From his perch in the darkness of the hillside caves and tombs, the demoniac is looking down on the lake below him, across the water into the land of the Jews like a sentinel, a watchman of the kingdom of darkness, peering across the lake into Jewish Galilee. And that's when he sees, it says, he saw Jesus from afar. He ran and fell down before him, and crying out with a loud voice, he said, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." In this way, the Gentile world made its auspicious debut to Jesus. He tells the unclean spirit to leave the man, but unlike earlier encounters with demons, this time the spirit does not leave. In typical exorcisms, the exorcist seeks to obtain the name of the evil spirit that he's dealing with. If the exorcist can obtain the demon's true name, it gives him an edge in that he can command the spirit under its true name in the authority of a higher name. Essentially, that's how an exorcism works. The book of Revelation employs the same rubrics with the deliberate naming formula as it tells us about the binding of Satan. It says, "He seized the dragon, that ancient serpent, who is the devil and Satan." 4 names. In this case, the evil spirit reverses the formula and uses Jesus' name in an attempt to command and adjure him. Jesus, Son of the Most High God. In the typical exorcism encounter, the exorcist commands an evil spirit on the authority of a higher power. So exorcism formulas often invoke a name of God or the name of God. In this instance, however, the formula is reversed. So rather than the exorcist adjuring the demon by the authority of God's name, the evil spirit is adjuring the exorcist while invoking God's name. He says, "I implore you by God, do not torment me." In Matthew's version, we get more specific with the kind of torment we have in mind. The demon asks Jesus, "Have you come here to torment us before the appointed time?" Matthew 8:29. So what is the appointed time for tormenting demons? It's the day of the Lord, when Satan will be chained and cast down into the abyss and ultimately, as Jesus says, into the eternal fire which has been prepared for the devil and his angels. Matthew 25:41. So according to the apocryphal apocalyptic book of Enoch, the Son of Man is the agent who's ultimately going to judge the fallen angels and their associates. Listen to this passage from 1 Enoch 55, verse 4. It says, "You mighty kings who dwell on the earth, you shall behold my chosen one, how he sits on the throne of glory," that's God's throne, "and judges Azazel and all his associates and all his hosts in the name of the Lord of spirits." This is an image, a vision of the day of the Lord, when the Son of Man sits in judgment over the spiritual world. And this explains why demons were surprised to see the Son of the Most High, the agent of their torment, in advance of the day of the Lord. In all other exorcism encounters, Jesus simply speaks a word or two, and the spirits flee. They flee from before him, shrieking as they go out. In this instance, we read in Mark 5:8, "For he was saying to him, 'Come out of the man, you unclean spirit.' And yet the spirit kept blathering on and on, indicating something is amiss, something has gone wrong." This is the only time, then, that Jesus resorted to asking the spirit its name in order to exorcise it more effectively. It says in Mark 5, "And Jesus asked him, 'What is your name?' And the demon replied, 'My name is Legion, for we are many.'" Who is Legion? What are the legions? The legions are the might and power and strength of Rome. The evil spirit identifies itself as the power of Rome. He says, "My name is Legion. We are many." Well, how many? How many is that? How many is Legion? It might be hyperbole. Evil spirits are not exactly known for their integrity. But the size of a Roman legion varied from between 4,000 to 6,000 soldiers, which implies that Jesus was not confronted by only one demon as he stepped into Gentile territory, but an army of them. And it says, "And he begged him earnestly not to send him out of the country." Of course he did. Rome doesn't want to lose any territory. They don't want to lose their occupation of the land. And spirits are territorial like that. They feared lest the master send them into waterless places, far from human habitation, where they could find no rest. They feared he might send them prematurely into the place of their punishment, as it says in Luke 8:31. They were imploring him not to command them to go away into the abyss. They feared that the hour of redemption had come, and that the Messiah had come to chain them and seal them in the abyss. And so it goes on. A great herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged him, saying, "Send us to the pigs, let us enter them." They begged him at least enter the bodies of these swine. Some 2,000 animals were told. Why? Because spirits seek out corporeal experience. It's precious to them. They said, "If you are going to cast us out, send us into the herd of swine so that we may enter them." And surprisingly, he acquiesces and grants them their entreaty, perhaps to facilitate a quick exorcism. He gives them permission. But the plan doesn't work out as they hoped. It goes awry because it says, "And the unclean spirits came out and entered the pigs, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea and were drowned in the sea." So what happens is the disciples are witnessing this horrible cacophony of screaming animals, thundering hooves, as this enormous stampede crashes headlong downhill. Like some sort of apocalyptic nightmare, the pigs charge across the shore and throw themselves into the lake, roiling up the waters and drowning themselves amidst this horrible racket of churning water and terrified squealing. Some 2,000 animals. I mean, the entire thing must have gone on for several minutes, maybe half an hour. And by the time the noise had died and the last pig had thrown itself into the lake, as many as 6,000 unclean spirits suddenly found themselves moping around dejectedly without hosts. The disciples must have felt like they had seen some kind of epic prophetic apocalyptic vision brought to life before their eyes, because that's what it was. The story of the unclean man who dwelt in an unclean place, possessed by unclean spirits, which entered unclean animals, has some obvious symbolic value. It's a story that's more than a story. The legion occupying the demonized man symbolizes the Roman occupation of the land. Several of the most prominent Roman legions carried the image of the wild boar on their standards, and the rabbis taught that the pig symbolizes the Roman government. It says this in Midrash Rabbah. The expulsion of the demons and the destruction of the swineherd hints towards the toppling of Rome and the liberation of the land of Israel, which accounts for the primary narrative of the book of Revelation, which culminates with Satan being chained and cast into a lake of fire. But there's something even more to this story, because the demoniac Gentile man does not throw himself into the sea. Instead, Jesus cleanses him of the spirits that occupy him. The people of the Decapolis arrive and find him dressed, bandaged, in his right mind, sitting at the feet of Jesus. And he asks permission to follow Jesus and return with him to Galilee and become a disciple. And the master tells him in Mark 5:19 and 20, "Go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he had mercy on you." Then it says, "And he went away and he began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And everyone marveled." The story hints toward Messiah's ultimate victory over Rome and over the Gentile nations of Gog and Magog. His ultimate victory, the final victory, is not the destruction of the nations, but the redemption of the nations. He will liberate peoples from the power of Satan. As it says, Satan will be thrown into the pit, which is shut, sealed over him so that he might not deceive the nations any longer. No longer will the Satan possess the authority and the glory and the kingdoms and the governments of this world to offer to whom he will. He will no longer have that to give to his subjects. Revelation 11:15 says that when the seventh trumpet sounds, the voices in heaven will declare, "The kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of the Lord and of his anointed Messiah, and he shall reign forever and ever. Maranatha.